Welcome to the At a Total Loss podcast, where lost moms candidly talk about their experiences with stillbirth that have left them at a total loss for words. It is through our stories that we hope to give you support, motivation, friendship, and maybe a laugh or two. But most importantly, we hope to give you light in the darkest moments of your life. I'm Catherine, a lost mom to my beautiful son Brody, who was born still at 36 weeks on January 18th, 2022. While trying to survive the sadness and find answers as to why he died, I found this community of incredible women willing to share their journey, experiences, and sometimes margaritas so that I didn't feel alone. They helped me survive, and I hope we can do the same for you. So grab some wine and some tissues as we navigate this awful world of stillbirths that has left us all at a total loss. Well, I wanted to just start off by asking, I want you to tell me about Patrick and his journey.
Okay. Well, this is, I think you said it's a hard topic, but at the same time, it's kind of a great topic, which sounds weird because we love to talk about our babies and we never have that opportunity. I mean, not never, but rarely to be able to be in that kind of environment, in that safe space, to be able to just lay it all out there, no judgment, and talk to others who understand what's going on. So our journey starts back in 2018. I found out very unexpectedly that I was pregnant, and my husband Pat and I were very excited and nervous as hell, absolutely nervous as hell. And then, the whole pregnancy was completely normal, no red flags, picture perfect on paper. And then we had found out the gender, 20-week anatomy scan. Again, everything's great. We found out we're having a boy. Full disclosure, I had a little bit of gender disappointment. I was like, this isn't how I thought that my, motherhood journey was going to look. And so I think I was really, I was excited, but I was a little bit like, oh, okay,
it's okay.
This is different. This is different. And I think a lot of women go through that. But I bring that up because I'll circle back to that later. But then in May of 2019, I went to my regular 24-week appointment, and I had talked to the nurse who was in there and said, I haven't been feeling as much movement as I should be, as I have in the past, and I'm concerned. She said, okay, I'll make sure that the doctor checks you out, and, we'll do the Doppler and everything. Everything's fine. The babies are sometimes, just a little unpredictable. And then the doctor came in, and it wasn't my regular physician. It was another one in the practice. So I was already like a little bit, whatever, but I'm chill. So it was fine. And then I told her my same concerns. She again was like, it's not a big deal. Like, everything's okay. We'll do the Doppler. So I'm, laying there doing the Doppler, and that mom intuition came in, and I'm like, I just know something is wrong. And she said to me, I can find your heartbeat. I hear your heartbeat. And then she was like, okay, I'm trying. And she didn't say the words, I don't hear his heartbeat. It was just, we're going to get you into ultrasound to make sure that, we can find it. Sometimes it's a little difficult to find. So, got dressed, walked down to ultrasound. The ultrasound tech wasn't there that day, so she was doing it. They had to boot everything up. And of course, like, this whole time my mind is just absolutely racing. What's happening? What's going on? Laid down, you when you're pregnant, you just know, you know the sound of your baby's heartbeat, and it becomes just such a piece of you and a piece of mind every time you hear it. And that connection, I think, is so strong. And it was silent. And she said, I'm going to get another doctor to come in here and confirm, but I'm really sorry, Kelsey. Your baby has no heartbeat. And so immediately, it's like, even now, almost, over 3 years later, my stomach, it's still like, oh my gosh, like those words, just are like a punch to the gut. And she got another doctor that came in, basically confirmed everything. And I was just sitting there. They're like, you need to call your husband and he needs to come. And so I'm like, I was in absolute shock. I had no idea what to think. I couldn't process anything. I'm like, this can't be real. This is a dream, a horrible dream. And so I called my husband. He didn't answer. It was the middle of the workday. And I just texted him and said, you need to call me. We lost the baby. And he immediately called me. We actually lived right next to the doctor's office, which was also the hospital that we delivered at. And so he ran there, legitimately got running shoes on, ran there, got there, and they put us in this room where they usually do the non-stress tests. So it was kind of weird to be in that kind of room. And, they sat us down and kind of went over everything. And he was pretty emotional. And I was just was not processing it at all. Had completely kind of,
it's like a state of shock.
Yes, absolute state of shock. Absolutely. And then they were talking us through and, I don't even really remember. I think I blacked out kind of. And then I remember them saying, and now for the even worse part, since you're so far along in pregnancy, we'll have to induce you and you'll have to deliver. And I was so freaking naive before because I was like, I don't know, maybe the baby just disappears or I don't know what happens. I had never even thought about it, which I think goes to show, how little we talk about miscarriage and stillbirth because there's not even that awareness of anyone.
It's
I was not aware at all. And now, I talk about it all the time. And even still to this day, my friends are like, wait, so you delivered? Like, yes, absolutely. It's just, and I can't fault them for it because I had no idea. So they said that, they explained that, and they said, we can send you over to the hospital right now and we can begin the induction, or you can go home, get some sleep, and then come back in the morning. And I'm like, right.
I'll go sleep right away. What?
And all I was thinking at the time was I just need to get out of here. I am going to scream. I need to get out. I need to not be here. This all just needs to go away. And so I said, tomorrow.
You did?
I did. Because I was I knew I wasn't going to sleep. There was no way I was sleeping. But I was just maybe it's wrong. Maybe I'll wait and see if there's some different outcome. And I think I wanted to process it and also talk to Pat, my husband, about it and just see, I don't know what happened. And so we went home and I don't even really remember. I think I called my mom and my sisters, my dad, some of my closest friends. I really don't even remember. It was just such a state of shock. And so then the next morning we went to the hospital. And then I was induced and they did, I think it's called a Follian balloon or something like that. Did you have that? Yeah. Painful as hell. That was not fun. The induction was not fun. The contractions were horrible, absolutely horrible, because our bodies weren't, my body was not quite at full term. So
they were also,
not,
I think, inducing us on steroids, typically not what they would do.
Yes.
Because it would harm the baby, but the baby's already gone.
Exactly. So I know that usually it's called Pitocin. Is that the, so usually you take it orally. I know they inserted it also vaginally in order to kind of speed that up even more. And so they just kept pumping it and pumping it and pumping it. And then.
Did you have an epidural?
I did.
Okay.
I did, which thank God, because I think that was, it was just so much pain and was having really bad contractions. And then we were there, we got there, he was born the 10th. So we got there on the morning of the 9th. It was almost a full 24 hours until he was born. He was born at, it was 10:13 in the morning on May 10th. And, the whole night before they gave me a sleeping pill. Again, something they wouldn't give you if your baby was still alive. And then they delivered him, I delivered him, and they helped, right? Then I held him, and it was the craziest thing. And I don't know if you experienced this, but it was simultaneously the saddest and happiest moment of my life.
It's unreal.
It's crazy. I think unless you experience it, it's so hard to understand, because your hormones and the neurotransmitters in your brain are telling you, hey, you just delivered a baby. This is the greatest thing in the entire world. Your body doesn't know. Your brain doesn't know. But your heart knows. And so it's just this weird, different kind of feeling. But Pat kept saying to me, I don't know how you're holding it together. How are you okay right now? And I was just like, look at what we created. Look at this beautiful, perfect human. He's so special. He's so perfect, and he's ours. And we made him. And so I was just trying to, not even trying to focus on the positive. That was just my natural reaction. And I think I can't give myself credit. It was definitely my brain just took over. But I'm so glad that I had that as my experience at that time. I mean, that was for, maybe an hour or so. And then, obviously it kind of just went back and forth, where it was like extreme happiness, joy, and then absolutely just distraught and just in disbelief of, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Why is this me? When am I going to wake up? This can't be real.
Yeah.
And I think, it was a mind trick on you, because I'm holding him. He's there in my arms. I'm looking down at him, and they looked like, they're sleeping. And you just think in your mind, oh, it's just this peaceful, sleeping little baby. He's going to wake up. And I know a lot of other moms I've talked to, experience that same kind of thinking of, your mind is just playing a trick on you, and you think that they're going to wake up or they're going to move or something. And I remember at one point his arm was up, kind of like against his head like this, and it kind of just moved a little, which obviously he wasn't moving. But it was just that trick of, oh my gosh. And I remember I said to Pat, like, oh my gosh, his arm just moved. He's like, Mom, stop taking pictures of me, because I had been taking pictures, which were never enough. There's never going to be enough. But yeah, so that was kind of interesting. Kind of funny, I guess, if you think about it,
It sounds normal to me, which we're this normal that people don't get.
Right,
I always say we're weird as shit. Like, we are. Like, this is normal, though.
Yeah.
To jump in and out of reality at that moment and just have to keep bringing yourself back. And then these waves of emotions are insane, and no one understands it, really. Walk me through how the staff was, like the nurses, the doctor. What did they do at this point?
Yeah, so great question. So my doctor, who was my OB throughout my pregnancy, minus the appointment, and then she wasn't on call. She was there the entire day when I was in labor, and then she wasn't on call when I delivered. So another doctor in the practice delivered. She was fantastic. She actually had practiced in Germany earlier in her career, and Germany is way ahead of the U.S. in terms of...
I want to circle back to that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
We will. So she actually said, I spent a lot of time working with stillbirth moms, lost moms, and learning from how it is in Germany about this culture of how important it is to have that moment, to hold your baby, to spend time with them, to name them, to do other basic things for them. And so she was amazing. And I think that if I didn't have, her, I wouldn't have, I don't know. Maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have. I just felt comfortable enough. But I think also part of it is you feel a little bit embarrassed and ashamed. At least I did. I think it's natural to blame yourself. I mean, I think that's a very, very, very common thing for miscarriage and any type of pregnancy loss, stillbirth, anything, you blame yourself. And so in that moment, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like, is this my fault?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what could I have changed? Was it something I ate? Was it something I did? You know, I had been exercising throughout pregnancy. So it was like, did I do too much? Did it, you know?
How long did you obsess over the what did I do? What happened? And going over and over and over the days leading up to Patrick's death.
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember?
I mean, months.
Yeah.
Months. And this is probably jumping ahead to later in the conversation, but I think even now, I would say, so I was doing really well with my grief after probably the 1 year mark. Then I kind of took a turned a corner, was doing much better. And then maybe in the past year, it kind of crept back up and I started thinking, and what I really think happened is I was starting to process it all. I think I really, really was processing it. I processed it to an extent before, but in the past year, I've really thought about it. So even I think I've thought about it more, not as much as the couple months after his death, but definitely a lot in the last year.
What do you do when they're almost invasive thoughts?
Yes.
Because we know it wasn't something we did. We know, I mean, what do you do when that happens and these thoughts come in? Do you sit in them and go over all the details again and do the facts again or talk to somebody who was there or remembers? Or do you say, nope, not today, I can't do this, and you move along? How do you cope with that?
Yeah. So I started seeing a new therapist about a year ago because I got to the point where it was really difficult to function in everyday life. And that was my main thing with her. It's like, am I going to be broken forever? Is this going to be what my life looks like forever? I can't keep, functioning like this. It's just not who I am. And so we really spent a lot of time looking at those thoughts and talking about the thoughts that I have. And her advice to me was, when that invasive thought comes into your mind, you can do two things. You can look at it, you can address it, and then say, okay, that's not true, and move on. Or you can get to the point where you say, no, I'm not letting that thought even come in at all. And then really third option, which is not the best option, is that you let it take over, which is what I had been doing. And then you just go down this rabbit hole. But we started doing, in January of this year, EDMR, which is a type of therapy.
Yes,
which
girl,
I think,
I'm a fan.
I know. I'm a big fan too. So it's a type of therapy for those that don't know, where you're really focusing on a specific traumatic event or something that really is painful. They started doing it, I believe, with veterans. That's pretty much how it came to play. And you almost get into a trance.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird. And even the therapist, when I went, so I did ART, which is similar. She was like, it's weird, right? I'm like, yeah, but you shouldn't say that. She's like, no, it's really weird. Your brain's a weird place.
Yeah.
But it works.
Yes. And so I did that. We did a session. Basically, you focus on an event. They tell you, at least this was my experience. They touch my mic.
It's fine. There's mics everywhere.
Okay. She said, okay, focus on one thing. What is it? What is it that you want to focus on? What is the most painful? And I said, the hospital room, being in there and everything associated with it. She was like, okay, we're going to visualize that. We're going to go through every single little detail. And there might be things that come up that you didn't even think of or that you've buried for the past 2.5 years. And so we kind of went there, and there were different things that we would come up with afterwards, and we would be discussing them in different details. And then that led to more, basically talk therapy conversations. And so we did an hour session once a week for basically 5 months.
You did? Wow.
Yes. And I mean, I don't think I told you this, but I graduated.
What?
So, yes. I mean, graduated, So she said, I feel like you're in a really good place now. And I had been at the place where when you start, they say, okay, what are what are your feelings right now, physically and emotionally, when you bring up the hospital room? When that thought pops into your brain, what do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
And at first it was my entire body tensed up. It felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My hands started sweating. I was like almost shaking. My heart started racing. And anytime I talked about, kind of really any of that trauma that happened there, that was the physical response.
The fight mode, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 5 months later, I'm sitting in her office and we're just discussing, everything. And she's like, you look so relaxed. And I'm like, I don't feel, like physically, I don't feel the trauma right now. I just feel like I can openly talk about it and feel absolutely fine.
That's damn good therapy. That's what good therapy looks like.
Yes.
Do you do talk therapy as well?
Yes. So now that's kind of what we've moved into is really more of the talk therapy aspect of it. And it's kind of changed, from there. But really, I've only met with her once since I graduated. So, yeah, but it's I highly recommend.
And that's I do too. I actually looked at her because in the very beginning of losing Brody, they were putting me on a lot of pills. And the pills were not working for me. They work for some people, and I'll give them that. But they were kind of making me feel darker. I don't know. And it was just really challenging. And my OB looked at me and was like, if you want to get pregnant anytime soon, you got to get off these. Because I was popping Xanax like Tic Tacs, and it was not healthy for your girl, okay? They were great, but it did its trick for the first couple of weeks so I could function. But I was like, I got to get myself together. Yeah. And I remember looking at my therapist, and I was like, so you're telling me I'm going to be able to think of this moment. So for me, my movie or my image was the day that I found out he was gone. And it was crippling when I would think about it. And I said, so let me get this straight. After an hour, I'm going to be better and I can talk about it. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, am I cheating? Like, shouldn't I like be miserable for like a decade? And she was like, no, it's just good therapy and it's science. And I was like, okay, I'm in. I did it too. I was sweating. Felt like my eyes were like going to fall out of my head. Yeah. I mean, it's intense.
It's really intense.
Really sad and emotional. So if you listening, go and do this. Have someone drive you. Like I would have wrecked the car. It was bad, but it does work. Yeah. And we don't talk about it too much around. And I think it's really popular in this community because there's so many traumatic moments that we go through. And I've even been told that it'll help us move forward. I mean, you went on to have Grace.
Yes.
And I'm trying to conceive, and it's wild what comes back into play. And I want to go back. Did you ever find out what happened to Patrick?
Yes. So, I mean, yes and no. Okay. We did a ton of tests afterwards. I did, full workup, everything. And they can't say conclusively what they think it is, but they did find out that I have a clotting disorder, factor V Leiden. And they believe that there was a clot that was in the umbilical cord that happened.
But they never saw it, or did they?
Okay, so this is crazy. So after my appointment where they told me and I decided I'm going to wait until tomorrow to go to the hospital, they said there's actually a high-risk specialist who's in this building that we have a relationship with. We want you to go up there to her office since she has, the high-tech ultrasound machine. Maybe she can see something that might have been a cause. And so, this is after just finding out that my baby died. I'm going to this other doctor's office where there's pictures of babies, in the lobby, which
the worst.
And then so she again said, I think there could be a clot in here. There could be a small knot. She couldn't really tell from that. And then even when they looked at everything afterwards, we decided not to have an autopsy, just because at the advice of my OB, she said it's really difficult with stillbirth to determine an actual reason. And she was like, you can do it if you want to, but it's really a personal choice. And I don't know if that would bring you any closure or any answers based on, what she had seen in person. And we decided, we're not going to do that. I think, for me, it's a very, very personal decision. But for us, it was, we just didn't want to put him through that. And so we did all of the testing, and that's when they said I found out about factor 5.
So you found out after you lost him.
Yes.
Had you had any previous history with clots that
None.
you knew of?
None.
So by the advice of your OB, you did some more blood work to find out if there was an issue with the clot.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then moving forward, did they immediately put you on blood thinners or?
So yes. So also what's crazy is that I had this clotting disorder, and you're never supposed to be on the pill when you have it.
Because I have factor 2. I cannot believe I was on that damn pill for almost my whole life.
I can't believe I didn't die.
Seriously.
I mean, really, though. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait a second. What? I saw a hematologist. She was like, absolutely never.
That's so wild. Same
so
thing
wild.
Here.
And I mean, I could talk all day probably about why all women aren't tested for this
is
before
where
you go on the pill.
I'm at a total loss for this. They told me that they do not test women if they've never had a loss. And I'm like, oh, cool. Okay,
so
now that I've had
trauma
one,
first, yeah.
I don't get that. And then they told me, well, because even if we found out you had it, again, I have factor 2. Factor 5 is a little bit more serious. Yeah. Even if they found out I had it, they still would not have put me on blood thinners with Brody because I'd never had a history of a clot. And I'm like, interesting. They then said to me, even if Brody lived, we still would not put you on blood thinners for your second pregnancy because you've never had a history with a clot or had a loss. I'm like, hold up. So then I go to a hematologist. The hematologist basically laughs me out of the room and is like, everyone has factor 2. There's nothing, I'm not going to treat you. My maternal fetal medicine is like, I'm not going to treat you. There's no reason to.
Oh my God.
So I'm completely confused. So please enlighten me and everyone else, because this is such a big deal sometimes that we are just like, oh, oops, you have a genetic blood disorder that we didn't know you had. So let's just be careful next time so you don't lose another baby.
Right.
I can't.
It's bullshit. It's such bullshit.
It's wild.
I can't even. Yeah, so I got pregnant again after Patrick died. I think it was 4 months later. I mean, we can talk about that. We can talk about that too. But it was probably I wasn't mentally ready. I definitely wasn't mentally ready because I was just such in the thick of grief and wanting to just be pregnant again. I knew it wasn't going to be the same baby, obviously. But I was just, I need this. And so I got pregnant. I went to the same OB who saw me throughout Patrick's pregnancy. She was familiar with my factor 5. She started me on baby aspirin at the very beginning, as soon as I had found out, which I think maybe I was 6 weeks when I went in. And then, we went over everything. She was so fantastic about it. And then I started seeing the high-risk specialist at, I think, maybe 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started the blood thinners, Lovenox, which are injections. And so I was on those the entire pregnancy up until, I think, 35 weeks. And then I switched to heparin, which is another blood thinner.
Why did they choose to do this? Do you know?
To prevent clots.
Even though you had no really evidence of it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, they strongly believe that there was a clot in the umbilical cord. So they were saying, yes. So from what I have researched on my own, and again,
yikes,
I am not an MD. So do not do your own research, talk to your physicians. But the baby aspirin is supposed to help the baby. Mm-hmm. And then the Lovenox or whatever blood thinner that you're injecting is supposed to be to help prevent the clots from your side of things. So a lot of those are hereditary. So again, they wanted to test, when I was pregnant with Grace, they wanted to test Pat as well to see if he possibly had this clotting disorder, in which case I think they would have probably advised us maybe it wouldn't be a successful outcome to have babies, because there's a higher chance that there could be a blood clot that could maybe not result in a living baby again. But, in speaking with my hematologist that I've started seeing after Grace was born, she told me, next time you get a pregnancy test, she said, call your mom and then call me. She said I should be.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. Yeah. Can I text you at any time of the day?
Right. She's like, I should be your second phone call. She's like, it's okay. You can tell your mom first, but then call me. I'm okay. I will. And she's like, and we will put you on Lovenox immediately, which is interesting just because, you know, I'm not pregnant right now. I'm not trying to conceive or anything. But when I do, you know, it's good to know that. And I know that there have been a lot of other women with clotting disorders whose hematologists have told them you should start the Lovenox prior to a positive pregnancy test while you're trying to conceive. Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with that personally, so I can't really speak to that, but that's just, you know, something that I've found as well, which is interesting.
So you're not on it right now?
No. Okay. And a lot of times they have you continue after birth. Mm-hmm. Usually 6 weeks is the normal, and they said to me, no, you don't need to be on it after delivery, which I was kind of like, wait, maybe I should, because I've heard that so many other people have been on it, but it was okay.
How was the pregnancy with Grace?
It was so hard.
Yeah.
So hard. I mean, losing Patrick was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Being pregnant with her was the second hardest.
Wow.
It was, I mean, just the anxiety. You're not naive anymore. You know what could potentially happen. And that was scary. That was really scary. And I mentioned earlier, we lived right next to the hospital where my doctor's office was. And again, they were so great. My first appointment there, she's like, you live right around the corner. Come in anytime you want. We will look at you. We will do a Doppler. We will do an ultrasound. If you need to be seen, just for peace of mind and to make sure everything's okay, you could come in every day if you wanted, which to me was just incredible. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. And I didn't end up going every day.
Yeah.
Because that would be insane. But no,
I
thought about it on certain occasions. I mean, and at this point I was going there twice a week already for scheduled appointments, and then also was seeing the MFM once a week, up until I think 20 weeks. And then I went to once a week at the OB, twice a week with the MFM, throughout the rest of pregnancy. And then was also doing, I think once 30 weeks hit, I was doing the non-stress tests in addition. So, I mean, I lived at the doctor's office, which I was completely fine with and totally okay with it. But yeah, I mean, it was really hard.
Well, I have to ask, when Patrick died, how did you put one foot in front of the other? What was your timeline? What did grief look like?
Oh my gosh. It was bad. It was really bad. I mean, I was just broken, completely shattered, laying in bed, didn't eat. I remember, I think back to it now, which is funny to me, but someone had written in a pregnancy group about how do you lose the baby weight? And I was so depressed at the time. I was like, I don't know, I haven't been eating. So it just all came off.
Jesus. Oh my God.
Because I was so depressed that I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
I didn't shower. I barely got out of bed. I was just a ghost of myself, constantly crying, not sleeping. I remember talking to my mom and saying, I can't sleep. She's like, your body thinks that you need to be awake to feed a baby right now. And I was like, yes, absolutely true. And like we were saying earlier, our bodies didn't know that our babies weren't there anymore. And so you still have these reactions. My milk came in. So that was just another giant fuck you of,
God, it's the worst. God, it's the worst. Like a baby would cry like on the other side of the state and I would just start leaking. Yeah. I'm like, what is happening?
I know. And then
so unfair.
It is. It really is. And really the only thing that got me out of bed, honestly, was my dog. The fact that I had to take him out. And I remember, so it was crazy because, again, the mental gymnastics that your brain goes through. And we could see the hospital from where we lived. And I would take my dog out at night and I would just look up and I could see the hospital in the air, like in the foreground.
The worst.
Yes. But then I also would look up and I would see all of these stars. And I just remember thinking, that's him up there. Like that star right there. You know, I would always find this one, and I don't know, maybe it was the North Star or something. I'm not an astrologist, so I have no idea. But it was
brightest and shiniest.
Exactly. I was like, that's my son up there. And so I began to associate that with him, which I think really helped. Still, even when I drive by the hospital, I think to myself, I'm like, is he just running around in there? Is he, you know, and I know logically that's not true. That's crazy to think. But I'm like, is he just this cute little toddler that's running around, you know, making silly faces at the nurses and doctors and, you know, whatever? Because for me, it was like, that's where I left him. That's where we said goodbye. We chose to cremate him. So we have a cute, teeny tiny little urn that we take with us. You know, it's in our new house. We put it there. We have a special spot for him there. And I think that for us, that really helped. Having him with us has been really special. And another, you know, going back to unfair things, I had ordered this, you know, rocking chair glider from Pottery Barn Kids. And of course, you know, you have to order it, the custom one. Yep. 6 weeks in advance or whatever it is. And so, of course, I ordered it. And then it arrived like a month later after he died. And I was just like, of course. And so we put it in there, and I basically created this little Patrick corner nook. And so I had his rocker there. I had his pictures. I had his urn. I had this teddy bear that we got in the hospital that I've, you know, gone on to associate with him. And I would journal and I would write letters to him, and I would just sob, absolutely sob. And I would just find myself sitting in that chair, you know, at times with the cabbage on my breasts because they were leaking, and the chair the chair that I thought
feel them now.
The chair I thought that I would be nursing him in, and you know, so I wasn't, but it did become very therapeutic to me to kind of have that spot. That was his space, and so that was kind of a good thing, I think, too.
Yeah, you sounded very mentally strong kind of early on. Where did you start seeking out anything at a certain point where you're like, damn, I gotta get my shit together? Or were you just like, I gotta come up with a way to continue to survive this? How did you find some way of coping or getting through it?
Yeah, so I think, and thank you for that, because, you know, I think maybe I have imposter syndrome always, where I'm like, no, I wasn't that strong, you know, because you feel so shattered. But thank you for acknowledging that. It was definitely very, very difficult. I think I went back to work maybe 5 or 6 weeks later.
Did that help?
Maybe. I mean, I think it was, again, I was just going through this fog of, okay, life has to go on. So this is what I need to do, and I don't want to lose my job. So I guess I'll do this as a distraction. But my work before Patrick, I was an overworker. I mean, I'm type A, so I'm like, I'd be staying late. I would be doing everything full out, best of my ability. And then after, I was like, no, I just don't give a fuck. Like, I can't do anything anymore, and I don't care. And I'm just going to show up, and my body's going to be there, but mentally I'm somewhere else. And then maybe a couple weeks after that, Pat had really been super strong for me. And he was, you know, I think kind of put his grieving on hold. Yeah. And then there was definitely a shift where he became absolutely just stuck and shattered. And for me, I was like, we both cannot be like this. And now I need to be that person for him as he was for me in the past 2 months. So I think for me, that was my get your shit together moment of, okay, I've got to do this for my partner. Like, we're going through this together. We're a team. We're going to help each other out. And we're the only two that know exactly what each other went through. And so that was kind of my moment of change.
Did coaching someone else kind of help you
Absolutely.
get stronger?
Absolutely. And around that same time, I actually started going to a support group. And that was incredible. I mean, having that community, and again, having someone who knows what it's like, you just feel like you don't need to hide anything. You're not worried about other people's feelings. I'm a very empathetic person. So I'm always worried, oh my gosh, am I going to offend someone by what I say now?
I was just going to say, are you still that empathetic
No,
person?
definitely not. Definitely not. Now I'm like, I don't care if this makes you feel uncomfortable. It's my life. So I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to lay it all out there and I don't care. But before, I think I was just so worried about talking to people about it and what were they going to think? What were they going to think of me? Which is so silly to think back now. Now I don't care. I will tell everyone my story, you know?
I love it.
And the details, most of the details.
How did friends and family respond?
It was mixed.
Yeah.
I had a lot of really good friends that were there for me, that were calling me. When we moved to Atlanta, we knew absolutely zero people here. So that made it even more isolating. And I remember Pat saying, well, should we call your parents? Should we fly them down when we were in the hospital? And again, I was just in that state of shock where I was just like, no. And I've always been the strong person in my family. I've always been the one where I feel like I have to be the glue that kind of holds everyone together. I'm the oldest sister, so, you know, I do a lot of mitigating of drama with two younger sisters. And I've really never cried or had, you know, kind of that emotional break around my family, which is weird. And so I was almost afraid of what would they think, how would they react by seeing me as not myself and actually showing my emotions. Mm-hmm. And they came down a couple days later. One of my biggest regrets, I don't like to have regrets, but one of my biggest regrets is not having anyone in our families come down and see Patrick and meet him and hold him. And I hate that I didn't make that decision, yeah. But you know, I can't look back on that because it's the past and I was in such a state of shock and grief that I couldn't even really process what that would look like and what the future, what that would look like. And I don't know, it was hard. And then I think even maybe 2 years later or something, I was in Florida walking with my sister-in-law and she was telling me something and she was like, oh yeah, my boss was really great. When Patrick died, like I went into her and I was just absolutely hysterical. And I looked at her and I was like, wait, what? And I don't know why it was so shocking to me, but I was like, wow, he affected other people. Like other people grieved him other than us. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that was such a huge turning point and that realization. I don't know why I thought that, oh no, this is only our child to grieve, that no one else is grieving him. And I think that really has been a big change for me also in therapy of realizing that he mattered to other people as well. And I think as a mom, you just want your child to be validated and you want people to know that they exist and they're real and they were here and their life matters.
Yeah, that's what some people, I was so worried to like first announce that we had lost Brody or tell anybody, because what a lot of people don't understand is that this is not a cry for attention. This is not I need sympathy. I need, you to feel sorry for me. That's not what this is. We had a child, and if it was a living child, you'd know all about it. Trust me, we hear all about people's kids all the time. So the memories I have of him may be a little bit different. And he's always going to be part of the family. This is us just trying to honor the child. That's literally it, and telling our story. Otherwise, I mean, we're not going to have, oh, he took his first steps. We're not going to have, oh, he got into a little tumble on the playground with another kid. We don't have that. Yeah. We're just, this is the story that we went through. And you lost your first. Yeah. I lost my first. That sometimes is the most challenging part of the whole thing, is because you plan so long for this baby and then the silence is deafening when they're not there. And then luckily, I mean, by the grace of God, you had Grace soon after that. But so these stories are so that people kind of understand who we are now. Yeah. We're not the same. Damn, I miss Catherine, who had no idea this was possible. Did you have any idea what a stillbirth was when you got pregnant?
So I did. But so my grandma, my dad's mom, had a stillbirth when she had 5 children, 6. That was her 6th child. Had an umbilical cord wrapped. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, a stillbirth happens during delivery. I didn't know anything outside of that.
Right.
I remember even just Googling about my own loss and was like, oh, it was a stillbirth, kind of thing. I didn't know, but it does help to put a name to it, I think. I want to go back to what you said about the old Catherine.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because I think I told you before, I felt like I had an identity crisis.
Yes.
It's like, who am I? Also, the person I was before was super positive, optimistic, naive. And now I like to say I'm not a pessimist, but I'm a realist.
God, I hate to laugh, but like I think it was me and Liz the other day, we're like, oh, it's so bad when you see someone with a pregnancy announcement or something, or like someone complaining about something. It's just a shift in perspective, man.
Absolutely.
Oh my. So do you let it fly or do you try to reel it in now? Because it's tough.
I think, it's hard. I think it depends. It depends on who it is, and certain things. And, the other day I was in this Facebook group, and someone said, my baby hasn't been moving as much. How do you get your baby to move around? And I wrote in all caps, go to the hospital,
yes.
because, and I think I even said, stillbirth mom here, go to the hospital.
Oh, good for you.
Do not wait around.
Everyone yells at us for scaring people. I'm like, I want someone to scare. I wish someone scared the shit out of me.
Yes, absolutely. I wish that someone had, and so I think that the old me used to be the person who like tried to find the positive in everything. Where's the silver lining? Now, I don't think that way necessarily, but I think that there is good in the bad, but it doesn't outweigh what happened. I hate now when people say everything happens for a reason. I'm like, no.
Do better. Try again.
Yeah.
That was
I'm
a
like,
miss.
when, if you have a baby who dies, why don't, you tell me that, type of thing, which it just irritates me to no end. But I do try and think, okay, what can I do? What was this purpose? What was this higher power saying to me? How can you help other people? And I look at it in the aspect of Patrick. How can I honor him by helping others? And so, I try and do that in a couple of different ways, and speaking about my story, our story, sharing research, talking to other people, building that awareness, in hopes that it can help someone else and just have other people more aware. I think that especially in the US, women feel guilty about advocating for themselves, especially in pregnancy. We don't have as much prenatal care as a lot of other countries do. And I think that that's a big problem. If like we were saying earlier, if we had had that full blood workup, maybe the outcomes would have been different, but we didn't. Or if, I remember just kind of being a little bit afraid to say, well, I noticed this, is this normal? And then I think sometimes doctors, and to their credit, I think they're trying to help you stay calm. Like, no, everything's fine, not a big deal. But I think, sometimes we struggle with that. And I lost my train of thought here, but.
No, I mean, you being here is just a testament to how strong you are. And you're wanting to help other people by telling your story. And Patrick would be so proud of you. Yeah. I mean, the only thing we can do is try to help others in this situation, because I know that you probably felt the same way, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel when you're new at this. And some days we just need a little kick in the pants that's like, you got this. So, we could talk for hours and hours, but I want to end on this. If you could look a lost mom in the face right now who's either struggling or is new, what would you say to her?
Gosh, that's hard. There's so much, but I would say, a couple of things. One is that your baby is real. They existed. Their life mattered. You are a mom. No matter how many children you have around you, you are a mom. You are a parent. You loved that baby. And they'll always be with you. And that, I think, for me, it's hard because our births were a bit traumatic. There was a lot of grief around them. And it's hard to separate the two when they're so tied together. And I think I've gotten to the point now, 3 years later, where I'm really starting to separate the two, where I can have those joyful memories of Patrick in the hospital and how freaking cute he was, and you know, remembering kissing his forehead and everything, and just being around him. Like, that brings me a lot of joy. And I don't have to have it attached to that trauma. And it took a lot of work to get there. But I think it is possible. And we have to do that for our kids. You know, we have to do that for our babies because, like you said, you know, we want to give their lives meaning. We want to make them proud. And I think they would be proud of us, you know, and what we're doing. And every time I think about it, I'm like, okay, am I posting another thing? Like, are people going to think I'm an attention seeker because of this? And then I remind myself, no, you're his mom. You're his number one advocate. If you aren't talking about him, if you aren't talking about his story, who else is? Who's carrying that for him? And that's something that I think I need to do for the rest of my life. And it's not I need to. It's part of me. It's part of my story. And the last thing I'll say is one of my dear friends lost her mom, and we were talking about, you know, just loss in general, and she said that someone had told her, you know, it's not I can't remember exactly, but she said it's now part of your tapestry. This is part of your life. It's woven in. It's not this one thing that happened at one time. It's all part of it. It's threaded throughout you. And for me, that really helped kind of have that visualization of this is part of who I am now. And I kind of get to write that narrative. I can decide, you know, how I share him with other people and what that looks like, which I think is a big help.
Absolutely. Thank you for being so strong and talking about Patrick. Thank you for telling your story and the ways that you handle it. You're so damn strong. I'm so proud
Thank you.
to know you. I know it was the shittiest of circumstances,
Yes.
but these relationships are so powerful and so strong. So are you cool with people reaching out if
Yeah,
they have
absolutely.
any questions
Yeah,
or need support?
please do.
Where can they
Please
find
do.
you?
So Instagram, Kelsey, KELSEY .Heslin, HESLIN. That's my username.
I love it.
Yeah. It's
Thank
not
you so
anything
much.
exciting, but it's me.
Girl, I think we got enough highs
Yeah.
and lows and excitement going on in this weird world of grief.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I mean, this is great. And like I said, we could talk about our babies for hours. And,
Oh, yeah. We'll do this again.
Yeah. It's great.
Well, I love you and I love Patrick. Thank you so much,
Love
girl.
you. Bye.
That's all for this episode of the At a Total Loss podcast. If you'd like to help other lost moms benefit from our stories, please share, rate, and comment wherever you are listening. Thank you for being the strong mama that you are. And remember, when things have you at a total loss, we're here to help you find the light in the darkness. Take care, lost moms.